In our ever-increasingly competitive construction, industrial, and automotive manufacturing markets, companies are either finding faster ways to do better work or falling behind. Time efficiency is arguably the single most important factor affecting profit and loss and in determining success or failure. The stud welding process, invented in 1939 by Ted Nelson, has played a critical role for over 75 years in helping leading companies stay ahead of the curve, one split second at a time. Nelson's split-second stud welding process is based on the same metallurgical principles as any other arc welding procedure. An electric arc is used to melt the end of the stud or electrode and a portion of the base metal. The Nelson stud welding system consists of a digital power control unit to supply DC weld current, a lightweight welding gun or tool, and the required accessories to accommodate a wide variety of metal weld studs to satisfy any fastening requirement. The stud welding process starts with a stud and ceramic ferrule inserted into the stud welding gun. The stud end is then placed against the work and the trigger is squeezed. An electric arc between the stud and the work creates a pool of molten metal, which is confined by the ferrule. The stud is automatically plunged home. The result is a high-quality fusion weld, providing a consistent, positive attachment in a split second, because of the molecular density brought on by the intense heat within the weld. The weld itself is stronger than the stud every time. Not all Nelson stud welds require a ceramic ferrule. When welding small diameter studs to thin materials, Nelson capacitor discharge systems eliminate the need for molten pool control. The weld time is so brief that the molten pool simply doesn't have time to migrate. This is often used in applications such as signage or insulation installation. The stud welding process was originally invented by Nelson prior to the U.S. entering World War II as a solution to the time-consuming problem of securing wooden decking to the flight decks of aircraft carriers. The common practice then was to drill holes through the steel deck and hand weld bolts from underneath. Ted Nelson's time-saving idea allowed topside welding through holes counterbored in the decking. Nelson's first systems had the added advantage of being lightweight and easy to move in cramped quarters. There were no concerns about what might be above decks, behind bulkheads, or about leakage problems. Because unlike drilling and through bolting, stud welding takes place entirely from one side. From this beginning, Nelson stud welding has expanded dramatically within the ship industry and in thousands of applications in every major industry throughout the world. The construction industry was fast to adapt and expand the scope of the Nelson stud welding technique. And by the mid-50s, the applications for stud welding in the construction industry had become virtually limitless. Thousands of buildings and bridges were built safer and stronger, with lighter and less steel, through the use of Nelson shear connector studs, which bond concrete to steel in order to develop a composite unit. Nelson systems also proved uniquely effective at other major functions, including securing electrical and mechanical systems, fascia, concrete forming, timber shoring, curtain wall, and concrete connection. One example of the era was the Manhattan Bridge in New York, where 1,700,000 studs were welded to the bridge surface. Studs are also welded to bridges on which the concrete is worn away between the grids to leave their metal exposed and slippery. Proven safe and cost-effective for over 75 years, today, Nelson stud welding is the acknowledged leader and an integral part of 21st century construction and manufacturing techniques in many industries. Contractors are frequently called upon to place metal deck upon beams with stud shear connectors welded through the deck to the beam and on top of the deck to provide a permanent form for the concrete, minimizing shoring and eliminating virtually all operator error and the cost of forms. Nelson studs can be welded to virtually all metals. Resultant benefits are speed, economy, and strength. Compared to hand welding studs, such as deformed bar anchors, shear studs, and concrete anchors, the semi-automatic process of stud welding provides consistently better weld quality in regards to physical strength and controlled chemical properties. In the 1960s and 70s, the automotive and industrial industries were seeking more economical manufacturing alternatives. They naturally turned to Nelson for individualized solutions for stud welding. Nelson responded by creating specialized systems for enhanced manufacturing of vital components and automatic feed handgun systems with rates up to 60 studs per minute and stud diameters up to 1/2 inch. Typical robotic welding of T-studs was adapted by a Chrysler assembly plant, where Nelson dual-schedule transformer rectifier stud welding systems weld trim studs to secure window molding. T-studs welded with robotic installations provided more reliable location and stud positioning characteristics than was obtainable with handguns and movable fixtures. As computerization and robotics technology advanced, Nelson incorporated state-of-the-art developments into increasingly advanced automotive and industrial equipment and systems. The development of more advanced robotics and weld stud systems also led to more extensive use of threaded studs for functional attachments on underbodies, floor pans, firewalls, interiors, and engine compartments. Nelson Systems robotic installations are also being used to weld fir tree studs. Nelson weld cells are employed at Volkswagen, BMW, Mercedes-Benz, just to name a few. Qualified Nelson specialists from the largest and most experienced sales force in the industry consult and advise customers on all aspects of stud welding. Services include assistance at the job site or in the shop in setting up the equipment, and training of operators in the qualification and use of studs, and ongoing support. Nelson Stud Welding. Over 75 years of fastening leading companies worldwide with the time and cost benefits of split-second fastening.